Hey there, it's Ash. Welcome back to Ash and Walls Minis, and today we're gonna paint a textured wall.
I'm going to build the color up in layers today, mixing most of the paints and colors with this ultra matte medium from Liquitex. And I'm going to start with an acrylic ink by Liquitex in Prussian Blue. The matte medium will dry clear and completely matte, and it helps create a more translucent effect without having the acrylic molecules so far apart that they have nothing to hold on to. If I were to use just water, I might run the risk of the pigment flaking off of the surface. As you can see, I've taken the liberty of letting my camera die while I worked. But here you can see, I'm doing a couple layers of the blue and using my brush to really work it into all the cracks and crevices. You want to see none of your base color. And in a couple places where I want it to be darker, I'm just going to dot some straight ink and let that feather out and blend in. Now we're stepping away from any fancy materials and going with good old apple barrel black paint. It's the super cheap stuff that I get at Walmart. Mixing in a little bit of the matte medium. And I'm going to push a little bit of a false shadow. Anywhere where I know there's going to naturally be a shadow, I try to basically just push it a little bit farther, because light doesn't scale all that well. Sometimes we have to help it. So in the corner and where the top of this wall would be, I'm going to go with this slightly more opaque but still thinned out paint mixture. And I'm going to put a little bit of water on my brush in a minute and really blend it into the rest of the surface. Curb my insatiable need to fiddle with my projects, I had to step away and watch a couple episodes of Star Trek and actually let this dry all the way through. When it was finally dried, I went in with more of that black mixture across the entire surface, top to bottom, going over everything I've already done. It really does pay to take your time and work the paint into all of the cracks and crevices, especially on a surface this textured. So that I don't lose some of the texture, I'm really working the paint and moving it around as much as possible so I don't have any excess. And in a minute, I'm even going to take a clean brush and wipe away any remaining paint that I don't really need so it doesn't gum up my surface. When this is done, let it dry again. Pick a show to watch while you do projects like this. And now layer 3 of the translucent black. I'm going to dry brush the surface using some gray colors that I'm mixing here, just to really make the texture pop a little bit more. Once you have a good mid-range gray, I cannot stress this enough, wipe as much of the paint off of your brush as possible. And then start lightly brushing the more textured areas of the wall that you want to pop. It really is worth taking your time and going over the texture as much as you need to with less paint on your brush. I'm going to do this again with an even lighter gray and wiping all that paint off, or so it would seem. And with the lighter color, I am going to be much lighter with my brush. The brightest colors you want to see the least of. And now, just for some color variation, I'm going to make a more taupey brown gray color, and I'm cheating by scraping some pastel into my paint. And just kind of dabbing that around in a few areas, not a whole lot. And about here is where I think that I overdid it a little bit. So I'm actually going to get a little bit of just the pure black and dab it off on my towel and start stippling the surface just to pull it back a little bit. And I'm going to dust a few areas of the surface with some brown chalk. This is really just to add a little bit of color variation and visual interest. To seal all this in, I'm going to use matte varnish from Liquitex. I prefer the spray version. The liquid version that you brush on, I think, isn't completely matte. It's a little bit shiny. So I'm going to use as little as possible. And to combat that shiny finish that's been left, I'm going to brush some more of the chalk pastels onto the surface, while the varnish is still a little bit tacky. At this point, we can reveal any areas that were taped off to keep paint from going everywhere. I had a popsicle stick on this piece to simulate a wooden beam, so I'm going to throw some stain on there and then run over it with the same brown chalk pastel that I've used throughout the film. And here we have it. We went from tile grout smeared on a board to a fairly decent approximation of a kind of gritty, grungy wall. I encourage you to play around with different colors and see what you come up with.
If you enjoyed this paint along tutorial, I hope that you will give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe.